what that journey is, that life journey from student activist to now human rights activist.
So I guess I was fortunate to be born into a family of political activists. So it was something I grew up with, and so I got involved at high school with the student congress movement, and when I went to university I was a leader in the SRC. And from there, I think really, having been one of the children who had experienced apartheid, going into a university at the time, still being in a historically black university, and I went to UDW, which was a historically Indian university. And so there were a lot of challenges to overcome, because I think the Indian community felt that they had invested a lot in the organization, in the university, and the influx then of African students from different provinces was something which was a bit uncomfortable, and we still had a white management in the university. And so really from there, you start fighting. Today they call it fees must fall. In our days it was just about access to the university. Children who academically qualified but were being excluded financially. And the fight then went from there. I did law, and I found that even though I had studied criminal law, and I still enjoy that in my personal time and space, but labor law somehow was something I fell into.
Good day and welcome to another session of Women in Leadership with Vee. In this channel and in these episodes, we amplify the voices of women in leadership as well as in entrepreneurship. And today I'm excited to have my colleagues with me, a human rights activist from the time she was young, and she's still fighting for the rights of other people. And today we've got Melissa Ntshikila. I'm going to leave the introduction to herself. Melissa, who's Melissa professionally and personally?
Good morning. And Melissa firstly is a woman. She is a mother of two young men. She is a worker, she's a wife, and she's also a member of a very, very crazy family. So, I've struggled at times with all of the roles, but I think that importantly, I still have my own aspirations. I have dreams and goals. I want to be a wonderful mom and example to my kids. I'd love to be the perfect wife. And I think I'm probably a bit of a troublesome employee at times.
Okay.
But on the whole, I love my work. I enjoy it. I am very happy about the people I work with every day. And so really, in a nutshell, that would be how I would describe myself.
That's interesting. I'm not sure about, I'm not even going to ask about the other parts of that introduction. Yeah. But what's interesting, you've got so many roles, you are wearing so many hats. How do you keep balance between the different roles so that they don't conflict with each other?
Yeah, so really, for me, I think a very long time ago, I figured out that my philosophy in life was going to be about quality over quantity. I believe that whatever you're doing at any specific time, you really need to be present. You need to be there, you need to give of your best, and make sure that the little bit of time that you are spending be it at home or with your family or with friends. Be there in that moment. And when you are at work, let work be the center of your focus. Okay. So really, whether I was a trade unionist or a lawyer or a government official, public servant, that has been my philosophy in life.
Okay, talking about that, that's interesting because your career has moved from being a student activist,
yes,
and now you're a human rights activist and you're fighting for the rights of women. Just share with us what that journey is, that life journey from student activist to now human rights activist.
So I guess I was fortunate to be born into a family of political activists. So it was something I grew up with, and so I got involved at high school with the student congress movement, and when I went to university I was a leader in the SRC, and from there I think really, having been one of the children who had experienced apartheid, going into a university at the time, still being in a historically black university, and I went to UDW, which was a historically Indian university. And so there were a lot of challenges to overcome, because I think the Indian community felt that they had invested a lot in the organization, in the university, and the influx then of African students from different provinces was something which was a bit uncomfortable, and we still had a white management in the university. And so really from there, you start fighting. Today they call it fees must fall. In our days it was just about access to the university. Children who academically qualified but were being excluded financially. And the fight then went from there. I did law, and I found that even though I had studied criminal law, and I still enjoy that in my personal time and space, but labor law somehow was something I fell into. I did some volunteer work in a trade union and discovered that I loved it. There was nothing more gratifying than fighting and getting a worker who had lost their job that arbitration award saying that they had been dismissed unfairly and they needed to go back into their employment. And I think as I progressed through that, I then discovered that you needed exemplary employers. And when I looked around, I did not see the private sector as an opportune area to work from. And then I thought, well, government should be the exemplary employer.
Yes.
Government needs to be the bastion of implementing the policies that they've written. And so for me, that move into government and now becoming a manager and being a chief negotiator for the state and having to advocate for the salary increases of public servants, I then found that was a legitimate crossover. And I spent a very, very long time in the employee relations environment. And, in a lot of departments, I think I probably was regarded as a fix-it, so I got sent into a myriad of different departments where traditionally negotiations and talking to employees was not the order of the day. So in the Defence Force, for example, I had to go in and help them set up the Military Bargaining Council. Now, soldiers operate on command and control.
Yes.
And, we had generals then dress up and say, I'm in uniform. And the attitude was that once you're in uniform, anybody below your rank could not question you. And having to then, as a manager, teach those managers that, no, now we're in a negotiating space. We are equals, we are partners, and we need to listen to one another in order to find a settlement. And that then progressed, and somehow or the other, I always found myself in the security services, in the South African police, in the security, state security environment. And yeah, those ones were a bit of a difficult one, because I don't think anybody loves getting involved in that.
If you're an outsider, yes, definitely. That's quite interesting, the journey that you've traveled. You spoke about access to universities, and you were talking about a long time ago, before 1994. And when I'm looking at it right now, I realize that our kids are still fighting for that access into the previously white universities. What advice can you give these universities that try to exclude our children?
I believe that, we need to do much more. We need to start talking to the private sector. I do believe that they are the ultimate beneficiaries of our educated students who come out of university, who are going to go into the employment environment. And rather than look at things like the Employment Equity Act, the Skills Development Act as taxes on businesses, they should see that as an investment in their own development and growth. And so that really is how I would want to position that. I do think that government can do better, and that we need to start looking much more concretely at more sustainable ways of education. I suspect that the free education concept may be a step too far at the moment. However, I do believe in paying it forward. And so really what you want is to allow university students to come into the environment, be able to pay for their university education. And once they go into the labor market, they are then able to contribute to the next generation. And so we did not have NSFAS, we had a thing called TEFSA, who then, they paid for our education, but once we started working, 40% of it converted to a bursary, and 60% of it was what we then had to repay. And that money would then be utilized to educate the next generation. And I believe that you have a sense of accomplishment. Today I feel very proud of the fact that I paid for my education. I'm a self-made woman.
Yes. That's important.
Yes.
That's very important. In your current role, you are an executive and you are in the transformation space. But in that role, you are also an advocate for people with disabilities and an ally. Tell us a little bit about that role and what you do in there.
So in my role, I'm responsible for employment equity, which of course is the numbers and the programs. And when you look at how do you achieve the numbers, you actually need to have concrete programs in place to achieve a target for Black employees, for women, for persons with disability. Even though young people are not a designated group, we do find that we've also, in our company, set a target for young people. And then a very interesting area is our LGBTQI community, who still today have a lot of prejudice that is, sent their way. So what we then do is we look at our programs and we look at manners in which we can access the work environment. How do we create a more inclusive space for women? And so in our company, we work 24/7. And so you will find that young women, for example, of child-rearing age, are working a 6 to 6. If you have a young baby, there is no childcare facility for you to leave your baby at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning so that you can be at work at 6 o'clock. You can't pick up your baby at 7 o'clock in the evening once you've finished.
You pay more.
Yeah, so those are the sorts of programs that we're needing to look at. Making sure that those facilities are in the workplace. For persons with disability, we are needing to make sure that we have access, firstly, to our workplaces. And it is amazing how, when you're an able-bodied person, you take so many things for granted.
Yes.
You do not even notice that you are going up a step to get into a room. And what that teaches you is that you cannot walk through life with blinkers on. You have to be conscious about absolutely everything that you take for granted. You've needed to realize that somebody else is going to have a difficulty with it. I need to always think about, when we have programs, do we have a sign language interpreter? People who are maybe deaf would require, who are blind would need to make sure that they have guide dogs. People who are in wheelchairs have access to ablution facilities, etc. And my peeve with everybody is always to say to them, guys, please don't use the PWD toilets. You have no idea. Just that little thing about how difficult it is that somebody is unable to go into a private space.
And the parking
bays. You're not able to get out of your car if you're a wheelchair user. So, those are all of the areas that I'm having to reconfigure, and that means that you need to keep abreast of the trends. You need to educate yourself all the time about what is happening in the space. The employee networks that we have set up is a key way of getting the voice of employees. So I can get firsthand from them, what are the challenges, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what can we change, what do we need to start doing, what do we need to stop doing, etc. Yeah, and then when, as you can see under here, there's not a lot of black left. So I'm also traversing the landscape with young people. And what I found very interesting, both with the PWD community as well as young people, is the creativity and innovation. Because persons with disability, every day, the things that we take for granted are a challenge. And they need to learn how to overcome those challenges. And so they're very creative in the way that they progress through their lives. And young people are exactly the same. They're impatient. They want things to change now. And so they come up with things that we have not thought about in our environment.
Yes, that's true.
So for me, I'm finding that that is the type of work that I'm having to confront. The LGBTQI community, I think, is one that I still have a long way to go in terms of getting the environment buzzing in our company. So We're really looking at the possibility of unisex toilets.
You speak about employment equity, you speak about people with disabilities, and you speak about the LGBTQ plus community and the fact that we haven't made inroads into that. Why do you think that is? Is it lack of awareness, or is it maybe there isn't enough pay to do that?
I do believe that it's more a lack of awareness. I believe that we also are very indoctrinated and that we aren't really very tolerant of different people. From a religious perspective, we are taught that it is not the right thing to do. It is against religious principles. God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Those are the common statements that you would hear. You also find that there is a view that this is a choice that people make. And it is very difficult from a traditional and cultural perspective also to teach people that these are not choices. We are born a certain way. And we need to accept everybody the way that they are made. In the same way that you look at somebody who has a disability, who was born with it, that it's inherent. That is the same way that we need to look at the LGBTQI community. Nobody makes a choice about who they are going to be. You either love somebody, you either find that person attractive. It's just something within you. Whether you find other women attractive or you find other men attractive, or you simply are questioning and maybe you find both men and women attractive because you just love human beings. And so for us, really, it is, I think the one thing in diversity and inclusion that I've been having to teach is that we are not trying to convert anybody. All we are doing is asking people to accept others for who and what they are. And if we get to that particular point, we will then have a more tolerant society and we'll have a more inclusive society where I can come to work and be whoever my authentic self is.
Yes, definitely. Okay, let's get to you now personally. What is on your bucket list?
My bucket list. So I have spent a very long time avoiding the books. I would like to complete my master's and do my doctorate.
Okay.
And then when it comes to my private life, I love travel. So the things I want to do is I want to see the pyramids in Egypt. I want to listen to jazz in Cuba.
Okay.
I want to walk on the Great Wall of China.
Okay, that's
And
interesting.
I want to write my support message on the walls of the occupiers of Palestine.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, that's a full life. Okay, that's
I'm
Okay,
not cold yet. I've still got a couple of years to go.
yes, definitely, definitely. And when you say it, when you put it out there, it's going to challenge you, because if you don't say it loud, you're never going to do
Exactly.
it. Yeah, so it's going to challenge you. Okay, I know you're still young, and we're not talking about dying yet. But when you are no longer here, how would you like to be remembered? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Or what legacy do you want to leave now?
You know, I believe that you need to do your best, whatever you're doing. I'd love to touch just one person's life. And I believe that if I can be remembered for having made a difference and helping to create a more equal society, that would be the legacy that I'd love to leave behind.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, apart from the legacy, I know you were telling me about your gray hair. You're not here. So I'm taking it that you have learned a few lessons from life. What are the 2 lessons that you learned from life that you would like to share with us?
I think that the first thing you need to remember is that life doesn't always go according to plan. And when life hands you lemons, I think you need to go and find that lemonade recipe. You
That's
need
important.
you need to learn to pivot and find a different way of doing things. So I had my life planned out in terms of what I was going to do. I was going to be this great ER lawyer, and I'd come in to my new company, and I was on my executive drive. And unfortunately, I got knocked down. Like many women experience in the workplace, life can sometimes be difficult, it can be unfair. And in that particular moment, I had to do that pivot. And I was fortunate that I also found a very strong, courageous woman who was prepared to give me an opportunity, who said to me, look, Melissa, it's not ER, it's transformation, but you've got a legal degree. You've always fought for the rights of people. Come into this space, make a difference for the workers in the company, in this environment. And in doing that, I found that I found myself, and I found fulfillment again. The other 2 issues that I think are extremely important: integrity. For my message to women, you must have integrity. Do not allow yourself to be a plaything to other individuals. It takes away from your competence and how people view you. You must always make sure that you are confident in your own abilities, that you get the job the right way, so that people may not necessarily like you, but they will respect you.
And that's important, because most of the time when you hear about women in leadership position, you hear about women pulling each other down.
Yes.
So that's important that we can do that. So you're saying integrity, and what was the first?
The first one was about being able to pivot, about accepting.
Yes.
And then I think the last one would be that listening is a skill. You need to listen to other people's opinions.
Okay.
You need to keep an open mind.
Okay.
Because what you always will learn in life is that you do not know everything. And somebody out there will have a brilliant suggestion that you need to take on board, you need to consider, and if you implement, will be part of your success journey.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. That, I think you have given us enough for today, but is there anything that you left out? Maybe some gems of wisdom, something that we didn't talk about and you feel like, I need to make this point?
I think, colleagues, the one message, balance. Balance is important. It is not a weakness to be vulnerable. It's something I learned when I got knocked down. I always felt that crying was a sense of a show of weakness. And in going through that difficulty, I discovered that self-care is important. If you need the counseling, the employee assistance programs, do that. Seek the help. There is nothing wrong with trying to be a better version of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
then never forget your family. When all the dust has settled, when anything goes wrong in the workplace, the people who will be your safety net, that you fall on and you break down, will be your family.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
I think in the rush to make money,
Exactly.
we usually forget
Yes,
everything else.
yes.
We usually forget the family.
Yeah.
I know you are a speaker as well, and companies out there book you to speak. What areas do you speak on?
I speak predominantly on transformation, employment equity, diversity and inclusion, and occasionally I've been asked to talk on women in leadership positions, the types of advice that I'd give them, employee relations. I do have a lot of people also ask me to come in and speak to them about the various labor laws, the implications thereof. And because in my previous life I was also responsible for legal services, so I wrote a number of, or at least was part of a team that wrote some of the legislation in the public service. I do get occasions where I'm invited to come and give my perspective on whether that legislation is working, what are the lessons learned, are we implementing it correctly, etc.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a full life. So if people want to book you for speaking or for advice, where can they find you?
The only social media presence that I have is on LinkedIn. I've not been very good at having many different Twitter handles, Facebook, etc.
But if they go
if they
to
were
LinkedIn,
looking,
they'll
if they
find
are
you.
looking for me on LinkedIn, they'll find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, that is probably the best place to find me. And give me a bit of time. It takes me a while to get around to that page.
Okay.
Alternatively, they can, my cell phone is probably the best way to get hold of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to share it or you don't want to share it?
Yeah, my number is 083 460 8271.
Okay, thank you. And there you have it. That was Melissa Ntshikila. She is a human rights activist and she's still fighting for other people's rights. And if you want to book her or you want to hear more about her, you can look for her on LinkedIn. You can look her up on LinkedIn. That was our episode of Women in Leadership with Vee. And this episode was brought to you by Diversity SA. Diversity SA is a management consulting company in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Please go to our YouTube channel, like us, share, subscribe, and that's it.